So it sounds like your concern is for your own electoral success.
No, my concern is for the Conservative Party's electoral success. The Conservative Party is only going to win the next election as long as we have a stable government. We have 2 years to be able to do that. Boris Johnson was an enormously popular Prime Minister, in my view. Well, at the weekend, I was in Peterborough. I went to the Diwali festival there. I went and saw people at the Great Eastern Run, and I went and knocked on some doors. And the overwhelming message from my constituents, Conservative supporters and those undecided alike, was bring back Boris Johnson. I stood in a by-election in Peterborough in 2019, a high-profile one. I didn't just lose, I came third in a by-election. Now, 6 months later, Boris Johnson as Prime Minister, we went on to win my seat and win the general election. We were 19 points behind in the polls then. We face a huge crisis of the Conservative Party now. And I think Boris turned it around once. He can do it again.
How many constituents did you speak to?
Well, I speak to lots of my constituents all the time, but my overwhelming message ever since we got rid of Boris was bring back Boris Johnson. But I guess on Saturday, I probably spoke to about 30.
Right, okay. Wow, interesting. One of your constituents has texted in saying, as a constituent of Mr Bristow, I'd suggest he only listens to his friends. Appalling lack of judgment backing Truss and Johnson. What would you say to this person who signs off as simply as EJS as their name?
Well, I always listen to my constituents, and I'm happy to listen to Mr. EJS, whoever that individual is.
Or indeed Miss or Mrs.
Yeah, whoever that individual is, I'm happy to listen to them. But look, at the end of the day, the results don't lie. And Boris Johnson won Peterborough. I got a majority of 2,580. And 6 months earlier, I came third. And it was a very poor result 6 months earlier.
So it sounds like your concern is for your own electoral success.
No, my concern is for the Conservative Party's electoral success. The Conservative Party is only going to win the next election as long as we have a stable government. We have 2 years to be able to do that. Boris Johnson was an enormously popular Prime Minister, in my view, when he was there. He did some good things, such as he got Brexit done. He powered us through the COVID pandemic. He got shots in people's arms. He took a tough stance against President Putin in Ukraine. And, of course, he invested in places like Peterborough. We've got a brand new university. So my message to all my colleagues, it's Boris or bust. We need to win. He's got a mandate from the members. He's got a mandate from the voters. And he was a good Prime Minister in terms of his policies when he was there. So let's bring back Boris and let's get that stable Conservative government that we all need as members of Parliament, but we also need as a country.
What will you do if Boris goes bust or if the Standards Committee finds that he misled Parliament knowingly?
Well, I'm confident that that won't happen. I'm not going to downplay those issues. They are important. But I think the vast majority of people out there in the country want us to focus on policy. They want us to get the economy going. They want to transform Peterborough into places like Peterborough into a high wage, high productivity, high skill economy. We're doing that, and we were doing that under Boris Johnson. We can do it again. I think those are the big issues.
Do you feel like with the rules that the 1922 committee have brought in for this leadership contest, do you feel like the party's engineering this to try to keep Boris out?
Well, I don't think much can be gained by turning around and saying the rules aren't fair. The rules are the rules. I personally, I think perhaps 100 is a little too much, but the rules are the rules. If it was 200 we needed, then I'm sure MPs would look at their constituencies, think about who's best for Britain, think about who's best for their local areas, and I'm sure Boris would get the requisite number of nominations.
What's your understanding on when we might hear something from Boris Johnson himself?
Well, Boris Johnson, you know, he's been through a bruising experience. I mean, I'm not getting my violin out. I mean,
he's been on holiday in the Dominican Republic. It doesn't sound that bruising.
Well, I think only the most mean-spirited person would say he didn't deserve a holiday after everything he went through.
He's had three, by my count.
I think only the most mean-spirited person would say he didn't deserve a holiday.
Perhaps I'm mean-spirited.
Well, I think, no one would want to go through your holidays and say which ones you deserve and everything else. And I think he nearly died of COVID. He had a huge job to do. And I think he deserves a holiday. I think that's that. Because we got down-tracked with Boris's holiday, I've forgotten what the question was you asked me. Forgive me.
No, that's okay. My question was when we can expect to hear from him. There's one suggestion from one of the Times correspondents this morning that he won't actually say anything himself unless he knows there are 100 people backing him. Do you expect him to speak publicly on his return from the Dominican Republic?
Well, I think I think the Times correspondent is right. I'm not. I don't have a backtrack to Boris. I've not spoken to him personally. I'm doing this because I feel it's the best for the Conservative Party, best for the country. And if Boris gets 100 signatures, which I'm sure he will, I'm sure he'll be standing, and I'm sure he'll win this contest and come back as Prime Minister and do an excellent job for Britain and for all of us.
Just another thought, and I've asked this of several of our Conservative guests this morning, including Baroness Morgan, Nicky Morgan, earlier on. I just want to get an insight into what it's like being in your case, being a Conservative MP right now. One of the words that was sort of floating around in my head yesterday was misery. Nicky Morgan used the words gloom, embarrassed. MPs must be finding it tough. She's disappointed in the party. How are you feeling?
Well, that's never my attitude. It's an enormous privilege to do this job. I'm the MP for my home seat for Peterborough. It's a place I love. I have the opportunity to advance my city and advance the things that I believe in. This is an honour and a privilege, and I'll always treat it so. Whether it lasts for 2 more years or whether it lasts for 22 more years, I will always have that belief that this is an honour to do it, and I'll always do this job in that spirit.
Bob Seeley apologised to our listeners earlier on, Conservative MP, when he spoke to us. Would you like to apologise to them for the mess that we're currently enduring?
Well, I think I never wanted Boris to go in the first place. I think this all started then, but that's then, this is now. I think the Conservative Party, the Parliamentary Party, have certainly let down people, but I think what we need to do is we need to unite, and we need to get on, and we need to run this country properly. And that's what Boris Johnson will do.
Would you like to apologise for letting down the people?
I'm not. I don't. I think that's a bit of a silly thing to do, to be honest. I think the Conservative Party, the Parliamentary Party, have made lots of mistakes. But I am one person out of 360. So to put all that blame on one person's shoulders, I think is a bit silly, really.